Well, it is such a joy to be with you this week, and this is our third group to come. Two other groups came from a different church, and this is our first time with this one from Auburn Baptist Church in Tupelo, and so really excited about them getting to know the Auburn community, this community, but also to know Arnold Road and the incredible evangelistic efforts that you make in this community. And so we're very excited to be part of that. We had a long trip, left from Tupelo into Memphis Friday, and flew overnight from Atlanta to Manchester, and so just had a long journey. But I was really excited. We spent some time in Bakewell yesterday, and I did not know that they were going to go to this extra effort to make sure that it was cool weather, and also to have a cricket game breaking out around us. And so we were excited about that as well. So it's been a great start, and had good rest last night. So excited to be with you today. Again, it's very joyful for us to be here, and we're humbled by your hospitality. And it's always very encouraging to us to see how the Lord brings this church together. You know, we can be on the other side of the pond, so to speak, and be over there, and to come together and feel immediate that camaraderie, that joy in the Lord together as the church joins ourselves together, and we partner together for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And that is certainly our defining thing, isn't it? It's what brings us together. So appreciative of Nathan, his willingness to allow us to partner with you, and it was a continuation of a partnership that I'd had before, but I'm so grateful for the opportunity God has opened us this week. Um, we desire at Auburn Baptist Church to be a very missional church. It's really our heartbeat. It's really, as we follow after Christ, we desire to take seriously that great commission call by Christ, as we should, right? That He has called us to something greater in this world, that we have a particular purpose to bring Christ to this world. And so at Auburn, in this mission mindedness that we're trying to have and to establish there, we break that down into really some seven simple statements that we try to abide by, and that it's all based on Scripture. Certainly, is to love the Lord our God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. Jesus said that in Luke chapter 10, where he's talking about the Shema of what Israel was all about, but he brings this to life there in Israel. Also, our heartbeat is to share the gospel with the lost. We have many lost around us in that Auburn community that we come from. And so we want to see Christ being glorified, but we want people to come to know Him as we do. We want to serve the community where we've been placed. And that's the beauty of Arnold Road as well, is what I have noticed over the time I've been here, is be able to see how you see God's role through you here in this area, so that you are reaching the community. And so we desire to do that where we're placed as well. We want to disciple the believer. We feel very strongly about discipleship and about the role of growing in our faith and being strong foundational followers of Christ. And then we desire to equip the saints for the ministry. We certainly want to see our church beginning to grow as individuals, so that they are equipped to share that. But it's really our singular focus as a church, or it should be. And it is very easy, though, and you probably could understand this as well. It's very easy for us to allow all kinds of outside noise and maybe some of the small things to become much bigger than they should be in our life, to where it distracts us from what God's plan is for our church. And so we have to always battle against that, battle against the distraction, battle against the noise around us, so that our eyes and our focus stays on Christ. And it needs to be our passionate pursuit, doesn't it? It needs to be the thing that we are most focused about while we're in this world, that our passionate pursuit is for Christ. I'm very excited that this week, that even though I've come two other times, I was not able to have my wife and John Paul with me this time. And so very excited about Paula being here. We will be married 33 years in December. Very excited about that. And she deserves a great crown in heaven one day, having put up with me. But that 33 years has been great. I will tell you this. I've shared this story many times because I thought it was very interesting in the way that things started. I was a youth pastor for a number of years. So I worked with those probably age 12 to age 18 for a lot of years together. We had just gotten married and hadn't been married for about maybe 6 months, to where I took our group of students whitewater rafting. Now, you may be familiar with whitewater rafting in America. There's a couple of rivers there that you go down where the rapids are very great, and you get on them on this raft and hit the rapids. It's a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it a lot of times that we've gone. My wife Paula was with me this particular time, and so I had this particular going down what is called the Ocoee River there out of Cleveland, Tennessee. And so we were going down this river, and we were going. I had done it many times before, but we were hitting these rapids. Well, I recognized that there was one rapid we were going down that we were going at a different angle that we'd ever gone down before. So I felt like something wasn't right. Well, as soon as we hit that rapid, we immediately looked. I saw the sky, and next thing I knew, I was in the water. Well, when you're going down a very fast-paced river that has a lot of rapids in it, you can start panicking very quickly. And so I finally made my way to the top of the water, did what they had told us to do if we followed out, just keep your feet pointed downstream, and someone would throw a rope from the side, and sure enough, they did and brought me back. Well, we got on the bus after the rapids, after that time on the river, and Paula looks down at me. She says, where's your ring? And I looked down, and my wedding ring was gone. And I guess maybe the cold water may have just shrunk my fingers. I don't know, but somewhere, even today, 33 years later, that ring is still in the Ocoee River, probably. And so it was gone. And so, after being married only 6 months, it's not exactly what you want to start the marriage out. Your ring's already gone. But we went that summer, got a new ring, and all seemed well. Well, late in the summer, I took our students to a water park, which is a place out of Memphis. And we had gone to this water park, and we had spent the day there. And Paula was there with some of the girls. I was with the guys. We were going down these slides and just having a great time. Well, we were getting close to the end, and we decided we're going to do one more run through before we have to leave. And so I looked down, my wedding ring was gone again. And I went, oh my goodness, what in the world? Now, this is just 2 months later that I'd already lost the first one. And so at that point, I said, there's no way I'm telling my wife on this one. So I told the guys, I said, guys, forget the rapids, forget all those slides, forget everything. We are searching for my ring. And so we went. It was total focus. I didn't care what was going on around. I didn't care what was happening. We were going from the pool to this place, just thinking, oh, Lord, please help us find this ring. And so sure enough, we got to one place to where I looked in this pool, and I saw something that looked like it was glimmering like gold underneath the water. Well, I jumped right in. All these other lifeguards were out there saying, sir, you can't do that. Sir, you can't do that. And I didn't care what they said. I went after. And sure enough, I reached down, and it was the ring, and I held it up like Frodo would, the ring of the Lord of the Rings. I don't know. And I was so excited, man, rejoicing. I told my guys, I said, don't you say a word to my wife about this. And sure enough, before we even left the water park, she knew everything. She knew all about it. But I thought about that. I thought about that moment. I looked back at that. My passionate pursuit was that ring. Nothing else mattered. All the fun that everybody was having, all the laughter, all the good food, all the slides, all the entertainment, nothing mattered. The entertainment, nothing mattered. The only thing mattered was to find that ring. But in a greater sense, shouldn't that be our pursuit of Christ? Shouldn't that be what we look? God, use me in this world. Lord, I don't want to just make these days go by to where I'm involved in so many things that are out there, all these voices, and I can be drawn in so easily. Lord, I want to be a passionate pursuer of you and your purpose for me. This week, as we go, this summer, as we come here this week, it is really our heartbeat. It's what we feel like that God has called us here. And that should be our focus, our singular focus here. This summer, really prior to this summer, we have been moving in a missional way at our church. 2 weeks ago, a team of our church went to Texas, and we went to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we went to what's called the Beautiful Feet Church, and their main focus is on the homeless. And so we spent a week working with the homeless there in Fort Worth, Texas. Once a month, at the beginning of each month, Sunday night, we try to go out into the community, do missional activities, whether we're doing service projects, but it's all to bring the gospel there as we begin to talk with people and knocking on doors. We just finished up our Bible school this past week where the gospel was shared many times to 6-year-old through 12-year-olds. Now, this is in no way to bring any kind of glory to Auburn Baptist Church, but to tell you that, like you at Arnold Road, our heartbeat is the Great Commission call of Christ to go where He's willing to lead us. So, our churches this week, Auburn Baptist Church and Arnold Road Evangelical Church, are ministering together in partnership. And it never ceases to amaze me how God brings His church together to serve side by side. We're partners in the gospel this week, aren't we? We're partners in the gospel. And during this week of evangelism, we will be sent out. We'll be joined together under the banner of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and His amazing hope that's found in the gospel. And what is the gospel? Well, I peeked in last week and heard of your service and Nathan sharing about what is the gospel. The gospel certainly is the good news of Jesus Christ, taking on flesh, dwelling among us, living a perfect life, and giving His life on a cross as an atonement for our sin, and mending that broken relationship with God that we had, that we broke. That's the good news that we have to share. The joy that we have found is that finished work of Christ on the cross. This is the living water that we have been called to offer. Now, maybe it's why I have been continually brought back to the book of John, chapter 4. Nathan read it beautifully this morning. It's the story of the living water that Jesus gives to the woman at the well. And, there's so many factors that are here, that are truths that we can draw from. And we watch Jesus and consider how He's called us to take the message of the gospel to wherever He's placed us. I love this passage because what we see is a very intimate and vulnerable Jesus. He's weakened in the flesh by thirst and physical exhaustion. And some commentaries that I read, and I read but one particular one, believe that it's very possible that Jesus had walked anywhere from 40 to 45 miles before He arrived in this town of Sychar. So you can understand why He was tired, why He was weary, why He was thirsty. Now, I don't know about you, but it's strangely comforting to me that Jesus got tired and worn out. Does that comfort you a little bit? Because you know why? Because I know that He can relate to me. Because there are many times that I feel tired and I feel worn out and I feel physically exhausted by the world. And I know that Jesus understands. We also meet another character in this story. It's a nameless woman. She's simply identified as the woman at the well, but maybe she's not named because maybe she relates to each one of us. And maybe she's not named because each one of us at one time or another in our life was that person coming to the well. And those people that I consider that don't know Christ, whether they're in Tupelo or Nottingham, these are persons at the well. And maybe we don't know her name because that's our story. But we have been there, and I want us to read again just a few of these verses, not all the whole chapter that we just read, but I want to read back in John chapter 3. I want you to look back at verses 3. And we're going to read through verse 14 again. So I want you to get this settled in your mind of where we're going with. And I want you to purposefully notice Christ and also this woman and how she responds. Verse 3 said, He left Judea and went again into Galilee, and He had to travel through Samaria. And He came to a town of Samaria called Sychar, near the property that Jacob had given his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, worn out from his journey, sat down at the well. And it was about 6 p.m, or the sixth hour. A woman of Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, Give me a drink, for His disciples had gone into town to buy food. How is it that you, a Jew, ask me for a drink, a Samaritan woman? For Jews did not associate with Samaritans. And Jesus answered, If you knew the gift of God and who is saying to you, Give me a drink, you would ask Him, and He would give you living water. Sir, the woman said, You don't even have a bucket. The well is deep, so where do you get this living water? You aren't greater than our father Jacob, are you? He gave us this well and drank from it himself, as he did his sons and livestock. And Jesus said, Look at these two verses, Everyone who drinks from this water will get thirsty again. But whoever drinks from the water that I will give him will never get thirsty again, ever. In fact, the water I will give him will become a well of water springing up from him for eternal life. And when we walk through this story, there are a number of truths that we can't miss right away. Truths that show clearly Jesus seeking to save the lost. You know, nothing about this story is accidental or coincidental. Uh, Jesus didn't just randomly sit by this well at this time of day and just so happen a woman comes up there, a Samaritan woman who just happens to come along. And listen, a Jew and a Samaritan, number one, just would never hang out, right? They would never fellowship, they would never have communion together. But it's no accident that Jesus is there. It's no accident that Jesus comes at this moment because I do believe this was a divine appointment that God had orchestrated, that Jesus had orchestrated. I have no doubt that Jesus had this divine appointment in store for this woman. And she approaches the well. And when she comes, she sees a Jewish man there. But before she leaves, what she realizes is because Jesus tells her that she is talking to Messiah, God in human flesh. You know, as she's engaged in this conversation, she meets the great I am. You know, so much is revealed about Jesus in this passage that I think that we need to see, and that reveals a lot to this woman of who he is. I mean, think about the different things that we see here. He's the good shepherd that has come to seek the lost sheep, right? And she's that lost one. He's the living water that's come to quench that spiritual thirst that she has. He's the one who's come to give life and life to the full because she's been purposeless and hopeless. He begins to reveal all this to her. Now, there are truths that I see that Jesus did in this encounter with this woman that I believe that he's called us to incorporate as even as we go out throughout this week as his gospel carrier, so to speak. And I want to mention just a few ways that I believe that we see Jesus act, that he's called us to act. First of all, what I see Jesus do is Jesus was very intentional. Jesus was very intentional. There's no doubt that that he is going to this well by a deliberate choice. See, again, I believe that he was going out to meet this woman, that it was a divine appointment. It was something that he had orchestrated, something he was ready. It was not an accident that he shows up at this well. It was a deliberate choice he chose to do in the middle of the day, the hottest time, because he knew that this lady was coming. And there was no accident. Jesus often did this, right? I mean, he did this with Zacchaeus. You remember Zacchaeus in Luke chapter 19, where here's Zacchaeus up in a tree and Jesus just happens by. Was that an accident? I don't think so. You remember the paralytic at Bethsaida when Jesus comes on. This guy's been there for 38 years by this pool. It's not an accident. Jesus shows up and says, "Do you want to get well? Rise up and walk." And sure enough, he does. What about the demoniac at the Gerasenes when Jesus comes to the graveyard? How many of us go to a graveyard to bring life to a demoniac? Well, Jesus did it on purpose. He brings life to this one. Divine appointments. Now, listen, there's no way I can say what God has in store for us this week. But I do believe this is that he knows those that we're going to encounter this week. He knows the very doors that we're going to knock on. He knows these children that are going to be sitting in that classroom unawares, but they're going to hear about a gospel story that's going to tug at their heart. Because I believe that God has already gone before us and he's begun to move in the hearts of people so that they might respond to this gospel message. See, this week, Jesus is seeking to save the lost through us. He is seeking to bring that living water to very thirsty people. And he wants to offer hope to the hopeless. You know, it should excite us that when we take this living water of the gospel and we offer it to the thirsty, that there may be some that are going to reach out and take a drink from it. We are to be intentional. So we make ourselves available to be intentional about going, about engaging in conversation, about looking for every opportunity possible. And I love what 1 Peter 3:15 says, to always be ready to give a defense to anyone who asks you for a reason for the hope that is in you. We have that hope within us, right? And this week, we're going to intentionally go. And there's a second truth I want to show you here, and it's found in verse 6 and 7. And this is one that's so very important. Jesus met her exactly where she was. He met her where she was. Look back at verse 6 and 7. Let me show you this again. It says this, that Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, worn out from his journey, sat down at the well, and it was about 6 in the evening, or the sixth hour, and a woman of Samaria came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." In other words, he didn't just hope that she would show up at the temple later, or even come to where he might be teaching at a later date. He knew where her lonely soul was going to be. It was going to be at a well in the middle of a hot day. So that's where Jesus went. Now, where we are from in Mississippi, that part of America, that part of American South, is called the Bible Belt. It's where a lot of conservative people live. It's lots of church attenders, and I was telling Andrew this yesterday. Is this literally? It is a church on every corner. I mean, really, it is, and I don't just say that by hyperbole. It's really, really. There was where I was before I went to Auburn. There's Calvary Baptist Church right across the street. There's a Methodist church. You go one block over, there's the Presbyterian. We got it all covered. We got the Presbyterian. You go down the street, we got the Church of Christ. I mean, it's just everything you might want. It's like the buffet if you want to go to a restaurant. I mean, it's everywhere. And so you go to these places, but the problem, in some instances you may go, well, that's great that you have churches on every corner. But sometimes I wonder because I think what our problem is too often is that we get bored. We become very apathetic. Jesus is readily available should we want him today. And so he's out there. And so to follow that missional call is sometimes hard for us because we have a tendency to get very comfortable in our Christianity. See, above our back door and what our heartbeat should be is this missional call. At the back door of our church at Auburn Baptist Church, a plaque rests right above it. It's nothing that's other churches don't have, but I see it every day, every time we go back there. And it says this: you are now entering your mission field. So everyone who goes out that door should remember that when you walk out of those doors, you are entering your mission field. It's a reminder that our mission, our ministry begins when we step out of the church building. And we're to go where the people are and bring a drink of the living water and give it to them. It's hard to go, though, isn't it? It's the calling, but it's not something that's easy. I mentioned that earlier that we had the opportunity to go to Fort Worth, Texas, a couple of weeks ago, and we were ministering to the homeless there. This church is very dedicated. They are right smack dab in the middle of just the homeless community, and so the community they were at one time in the city limit, right downtown, but they shoved them all to a particular area outside because they didn't want their kind to be seen. And so these guys who had a heart for the homeless found this church right in the middle of that and established a ministry there. So we went there, and this church that ministers the homeless, it's a fascinating ministry that they have going on with meals and clothing and medical help and dental help. But when we minister through that week, it's really the last night of ministry that's always so impactful. I mean, the last worship service is very impactful for us as well, because can you imagine sitting in a worship service and look around and it's just homeless people that have come off the street that are worshiping. And so you're there and it's time for the offering, and you see some of these homeless reaching in their pocket and they're giving dollar bills that they don't have to give, really. And they're coming there, and you're very humbled by that. And you begin to watch them come forth, and an invitation when at Auburn Baptist, sometimes we are too proud to come forward at the invitation time. But you see, when you ask anyone that needs to come forward because they feel a desperate call for Christ, you see the altars filled. It's amazing to see. But it's the last night of ministry on that Friday night that always comes back to me. It's the evening where our group goes out into the streets. And so we go to where they are. So it may be under bridges, it may be on the street, where they just sit day after day after day. And you see so many, not even in tents, just living on the street with all their possessions, all that they have close beside them. And as we go and as we engage in conversation, we pray and try to bring that gospel story. But I can remember even this moment, and this was just a few weeks ago, but I remember all the faces that I saw and had conversation with. I remember these broken, hurting people, and I wrote their names down. I remember just a few that I'll mention to you. I remember Jerry. There is Jerry sitting on the right on the curve with just living in a wheelchair. That was Jerry's life, just living in a wheelchair and just having conversation. You just think about, where does this going to lead you as you just begin to have conversation with him? I remember Daryl. He was a large man. He really had taken this role as kind of a protector over those other vulnerable homeless that were out there. He was a gentle soul, yet he himself lived on those same streets. And then there was this one girl, never forget. Her name was Panda, of all names. I began to talk to Panda, and her crystal blue eyes just stood out at me. And yet there was her body broken by drugs and the hard life on the street. And I offered a prayer and a bottle of water and a message of hope. And I felt like there was so little of what I could do. And I tried to urge her to come back to the church later, that there she might receive that fellowship and that love and that care that she needed. But I never saw Panda again. But when I think about those we encountered on the streets, I remember that I really became angry. And it wasn't at the homeless people that I became angry at. I became angry at what the enemy does to people, how he loves to promise them everything. You begin to get in conversation with some of these homeless, and they tell you their past. They'll tell you everything if you ask. And they'll tell you about their story and their life story and what they came from, and the moment that they veered away from what a path that they were headed. And I became angry because I see what the enemy loves to do to people, to promise them everything, but end up giving them nothing but pain, because he wants to reduce people to hopelessness. And we have a world full of people that are around us that have fallen into that lie. And they have run after all the distractions and all the things that this world seems to offer. Man, if you run after this is all your hopes and dreams are here. Run after this. This is the fulfillment that you're all looking for. And yet every time we run away from anything that is not of Christ, it's going to lead to hopelessness and pain. We have been called to bring living waters. What Jesus was doing by the well that day. Jesus went to share where she would be, so that he might offer her living water to quench the real thirst that she had. It's always been Jesus' style, though, hasn't it? Going from village to village, going to town, walking on the streets where the blind beggar might be out there to let him open their eyes. He's out there teaching in the open so that he might minister to the woman that's caught in the very act of adultery, and give her hope when no one else would. He walked along the roads where the lepers might be, and he went out to where a funeral was happening so that a boy might be brought back from the dead. See, Jesus would always go to where the people were. Jesus didn't wait for people to come to him. He went to where they were. He came to seek and to save the lost. And he's called us to do the same, hasn't he? We must be willing to go. We must be willing to go where the spiritually thirsty are. But finally, there's one other truth I will share with you, and this is the best one, is Jesus offered her what she needed most. And what was that? Himself. He offered himself to her. He offered her that drink of spiritual water. I want you to look once more at verse 13 and 14 with me. Jesus said this, everyone who drinks from this water will get thirsty again. And he's talking about that well that she's come time after time after time. But verse 14 says this, but whoever drinks from the water that I will give him will never get thirsty again ever. In fact, the water I will give him will become a well of water springing up from within him for eternal life. Jesus knew what she needed most. Now listen, she could have kept coming to that well day after day, but she was going to thirst tomorrow, wasn't she? She could marry for a sixth time or a seventh time and keep going to relationship after relationship after relationship, but she was still going to get thirsty. She could continue to stay isolated from all the others and try to live a life all alone, but she would thirst and thirst and thirst. For as long as man has been on this earth, he has been doing all he can to try to quench a spiritual thirst with the things of the world. And it never has worked, has it? It never has worked. Wealth, position, power, never worked. Acceptance from others or trying to get your feel from what others think about you, it's never worked. Relationships, doesn't do it. Pleasure, it's never happened. Now, it might have been your story at one time. It might have been your testimony. See, there was a time in many of our lives here when Jesus met us at our well, didn't he? A well that we had gone to over and over and over. But this time, this one time, he offered us that living water. And maybe it was then that you realized that sin had entered your life by your choice and that you had intentionally rebelled against a holy God and that sin had separated you from him. And maybe it was then that you realized, my goodness, I'm a broken person. I'm a mess. And you had no hope of restoring something that had been broken. No amount of good deeds that you could do. No promises to do better next time or to turn over a new leaf or even attempt a fresh start. But only when the living water was offered to make all things new did you drink. And only through the sacrificial death of Christ on that cross and his resurrection 3 days later, Jesus would say it. He would say it, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no man can come to the Father but through me. The atonement for sin accomplished, a reconciling of a broken relationship with the Father mended, a way for the forgiveness of sin and for an eternity with him. And maybe when we reached out to that living water offered, you understood what it meant, a surrender, right? We surrender to him. Paul wrote it in Galatians chapter 2, verse 20. What did he say? I have been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. Well, when you read the rest of this story and the end of the story, the woman believes. She believes in that living water, and she takes a big, hefty drink. Jesus says that at that point, or John writes this later, is that at that point, she dropped her water jar. She could care less about that, and she headed to the village. She left what she had come there for, but she got far more than she had ever thought she would get. No longer many. She ran to the village because she had a story to tell. And as a result, many in that Samaritan village made their way to Jesus. And when the disciples gather, he uses a picture that the disciples were seeing because they come after everything has happened. And all of a sudden they look out and this mass amount of people are coming their way and they're going, what in the world? And Jesus looks out and says, hey, that's the harvest. They're coming. They're coming. They're out there. They're ready. It's our calling this week. And it's our day-to-day calling, isn't it? Maybe our prayer echoes Isaiah's response, or it should be, when God questions. What does he say? Hey, who's going to go? Let me put a little southern spin on it. Hey, y'all, who's going to come? Who's going to go? Who am I going to send? You remember what Isaiah said? Here I am. Send me. Maybe that's our prayer. How did it happen? Well, Jesus was intentional. He made a choice. I'm going to the well. He went to where she was. And she knew the water that she was thirsty for, and that was him. That is our call